from the Bank Plus studios on ESPN 105.9. You're in the zone.
Out of Bounds, ESPN 105.9 The Zone, is brought to you by the GMC Sierra Truck and Yukon at Fowler Buick GMC in Brandon. Jump online, FowlerBuickGMC.com. Test drive a GMC Sierra Truck this week. You'll love it. Twitter handle at BowBounds, number 601-707-3750. And we welcome in ESPN Insider, College Game Day on ESPN Radio. He is Brad Edwards. Brad, good morning. Welcome in, man.
Morning, Bo. Short week for you. You taking a couple days off at the end or no?
We are. We'll be on, today and tomorrow, and then we're out till Monday.
All right. Well, happy Thanksgiving to you and everybody listening.
Happy Thanksgiving to you, bud. Man, it's been a tough one this year in the state of Mississippi, but we've got a lot. There's some, great drama going on as far as what LSU's going to do. Could Sumlin screw up on Thursday and be back on the hot seat? I don't know. But we just had Mike Detillier on, and he lives down in New Orleans, and we consider him an LSU insider. And not that this is any kind of breaking news, but he feels like Jimbo Fisher's a done deal to LSU, which then, Brad, not only is that intriguing for the SEC West, which drives this show, but it opens up another great job. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, look, at this point, it seems like LSU has got all of its eggs in one basket, with Coach O not doing what he needed to do in order to be a viable candidate for the job. I think we're now down to, if it's not Jimbo, where does LSU go? And if it isn't Jimbo, there's a pretty good chance that, the fan base is going to be disappointed with the hire. I would say, even if it is Jimbo, I am well, first of all, let me just say that I am certain that he will continue to recruit really well at LSU. Their talent is not going to drop off because he has recruited by the rankings at the same level as Alabama over the last few years at Florida State. So I would imagine that LSU's pipeline would continue there. And I think their offense clearly would be better. Now, what I do question about Jimbo is that in his years as head coach at Florida State, he's had two really good seasons, and both of them came with the number one overall pick in the draft, Jameis Winston, as his quarterback. And he's had several other good quarterbacks, and yet only those two seasons did they contend for a national title. And you could even argue that the second year under Jameis, they really weren't that good. They could have easily lost 4 or 5 games. They just managed to win a bunch of close ones and finally got blown out in the playoff. So I have a very hard time putting Jimbo among the top tier or on the top tier of coaches in college football, just because his best success has come, with the best player in college football as his quarterback. And when he hasn't had that, he's been good but not great. And so I'm sure he'll be better than Les Miles was, and that's the first step for LSU. But I'm not sure I'd have a great deal of confidence that he's going to come in and really change everything in terms of making them the power that they want to be. But we'll see. We'll see. Maybe there's something about LSU that would be better for him than Florida State if he even makes the move.
Brad Edwards, ESPN Insider, talking LSU and their job opening. It's not going to be Eddie O, so what direction do they go? And so you're not on the Jimbo as an elite. I guess
he's not elite. I don't think he's.
You
elite.
have Saban and Meyer, and then you go to another. You go down
Harbaugh.
a notch.
I would take Harbaugh over Jimbo in a heartbeat.
Wow.
But he's good. I mean, he's in that next tier of guys. Look, he's won a national title with one of the most dominant teams, in modern college football. Look, that national championship game they almost lost, by the way, to Auburn, is the only game they played all season that wasn't a just complete mismatch. I mean, they absolutely rolled that year. So, he put together one really good team, and you have to give him credit because he recruited those guys. It wasn't like he took over someone else's team. But I just haven't seen the consistency out of him as a head coach to put him on the level with the very best. But like I said, I put him in that next group, and I'm not sure that I had Les Miles in that second group. So it is an upgrade for LSU at the end of the day.
Well, let's discuss that second group. No, hold on. I want to throw out some other names that I think are really good coaches that have won at places where it's difficult to win, Brad, just in case this doesn't go down with Jimbo, or depending on what happens with Texas, or even if it does go down with Jimbo and then Florida State opens up. Because Florida State's not obviously getting Jimbo. He will have left. They're not getting Meyer, Saban, or Harbaugh. Brett Bielema, Arkansas, is 13-5 in his last 18 SEC games. Martin Antonio, I know they're struggling this year, but he's got a great track record. Mike Gundy's got a super track record. They're a little down. TCU's a little down, but Gary Patterson. Any of that do anything for – I don't believe in the Fedora stuff. Bartu has told us his numbers on coaching effect are not good and that it's smoke and mirrors and people just fall in love with him, but he lost to too many teams he should not have lost to at Southern Miss and now at North Carolina. So do any of those names do anything for you depending on what could happen at Florida State and if we get this domino effect going?
Well, I mean, look, some of those names, yes, they do something for me, but in terms of them feeling like a fit at FSU, not really. I mean, look, I think Bielema's an acquired taste just because you know he's going to run his mouth, okay? And so if you're not comfortable with your head coach doing that, then he's not the guy for you. D'Antonio is very interesting. I don't know what his interest level is in going elsewhere. I'm sure he's had offers in recent years. None that I've heard a lot about, but you'd think that, he would recognize there are places better equipped to, compete for championships than Michigan State. And yet,
with the Harbaugh pressure, right? I mean,
well, that's true. I mean, look, he's in the same division as arguably two of the three best coaches in college football. Wouldn't seem like a great, long-term spot to be, but, so I don't know. We'll see. Look, I mean, D'Antonio went to South Carolina, right? So it's not like he's a guy who all of his roots are sitting there in the Midwest. I think that one maybe is more intriguing. I just, for whatever reason, I don't see Gary Patterson leaving that general Texas area of the country. But he's a great coach too, and I think Florida State could certainly do a lot worse than Gary Patterson.
Wow, I mean, if Florida State comes open, Brad, that's a big time job. I mean, because
it's a loaded roster, Bo. I mean, look.
Well, that's a good point too.
Francois. I mean, Francois just played his redshirt freshman year, and I mean, look, technically, if he was an NFL prospect, he could only have one season left. But more than likely, you're going to have him for at least 2 more years. And as I said, Jimbo has recruited at the same level as Alabama for about 3 straight years. I mean, that is and this is why I don't buy into Jimbo as an elite coach, because he has Alabama talent and he's losing to ACC teams other than Clemson. That should not be happening. And so, but in terms of the next coach, I mean, you're taking over a very talented roster. And I would say that their offensive line has certainly been a problem this year, but the defense has been shaky as well, and it just their performance has not been equal to the sum of the talent that they have. And maybe Jimbo's been there too long. I mean, you know how that is. Sometimes these days, especially with all the scrutiny and everything that goes on.
Okay, what?
7-8 years can be a long time. Can seem like forever.
I know he's been through some peaks and valleys, and we're visiting with Brad Edwards, ESPN insider, national college football analyst on the New Belgium Fat Tire Hotline. And I love this. I mean, this coaching carousel stuff's great. But with LSU and Texas will come open, when Florida State comes open, I mean, you're looking at a domino effect, I think. But who else? Who else would be? As far as the Florida State alums, who else would get them fired up? Because there's just Would Gus Malzahn look? Gus is in a bad spot. He's in a state where the greatest coach to ever and recruiter of all time is there, and it looks like he's going to win his 6th national championship. With Gus, with the peaks and valleys, you think Gus would? I think he would jump if considered. How do you see that?
I don't really see there being a big market for Gus.
Okay.
I am trying to think of who else it would be, and let's keep in mind not that a team's identity has to stay what it's been, but in this era of the spread up tempo, Jimbo has remained pro style, not going fast tempo and all that stuff, and so I kind of think of Florida State in those terms, and it doesn't have to be that way. But I'm just trying to think of who is not running one of those really modern offenses, because that's not what they've done. But look, I think Alabama is a great example here that you can take that type of offense and put it, like we think a lot of times of those types of offenses as equalizers for teams that have a little bit lesser talent. Okay, let's go really fast and keep the more talented defense on their heels, and we're gonna get some mismatches and whatever. And sure, it works for that. But the other side of it is, if you take elite talent and you start going up tempo and running the quarterback. I mean, look what Alabama has done this year. And while there's some games that it obviously it's kind of lacking just because of the deficiencies in the passing game that Alabama has right now. If someone came in and installed that kind of offense with Florida State and the talent they have, I mean, they could do more damage.
Right.
I think. So I don't know, Bo. It's something I have not given a lot of thought to yet in terms of who would the best candidates be at FSU, because I don't know. I do know this though. Like if you're Jimbo, if you think that it's ever in the cards for you to make the move to LSU, you better do it now. Because they could hire someone else who ends up being their coach for the next decade.
True.
And
then you're done.
Of course, the other side of it is that you also, this is 2 years in a row that that you've kind of flirted with another job, and your administration knows that, and that's something that they keep in mind. If you start to have 8 and 4 seasons, their loyalty to you is not what it could be if they believe that you're not completely loyal to them.
Brad Edwards on the Out of Bounds show, because I don't see David Shaw or Chris Peterson leaving the West Coast. Now, Stoops has been at Oklahoma for a long, long time, and many people believe that he needs and there's people that both on the Oklahoma side and just national college football people that think, hey, maybe he needs a reboot for maybe the last 8 to 10 years, and he'd be walking into a place, as you know, that recruits itself. So I don't know. That Stoops, Shaw, and Peterson may be guys, but I just find it hard to believe that Shaw or Peterson will leave San Francisco or the Seattle area.
I do think, Bo, Florida State's going to have to be someone who has previous head coaching experience. I don't think that's going to be someone's first job, and I really would be surprised if they just took someone from a smaller conference who hadn't already shown that they could, win at a higher level.
What if Herman? Great point on our Twitter feed, Brad. What if Herman said, Texas looks like a train wreck, and you can't get your culture right. I'll go to Florida State. That would be.
I still think Texas is the easiest path to get in the playoff. I mean, if you're recruiting at a high level at Texas, Oklahoma is the only team you have to worry about. There should be no one else in the Big 12 that should be a threat to you if you have elite talent.
True.
And look, at Florida State, you could argue that, okay, it's just Clemson, because how often is Louisville going to have, the best player in college football as their quarterback? But I still think having to play Florida every year, there's some other pitfalls at Florida State. I think Texas is the easiest path for any program to get to the national title.
Somebody just texted in, Brad. People can say what they want, but Dan Mullen with FSU talent would be dangerous. I know he's having a bad year this year, but you know how hard it is to win there. He's got a quarterback playing for the Dallas Cowboys every weekend, and he did go to 6 straight bowl games.
Recruiting Florida.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I mean he knows Florida from a recruiting standpoint from having been in Gainesville. So Look, I don't think he would be the first guy on their list.
No.
But it wouldn't shock me if he was like, 3 or 4 and they ended up coming down to somebody like him. I mean, look, he like I said earlier, is someone who has proven that he can win in a major conference. I mean, look, anyone listening to this show knows that having Mississippi State at number 1 in the nation for 5 weeks is a miraculous achievement. And I'm not saying that, he's a miracle worker because of it, but you can't be a bad coach and do that. You just can't.
No.
I know he had a great quarterback, even better than we realized at the time, but still.
Out of the rivalry games, I don't know what we're going to get from LSU and A&M, Brad. And the QB play has been atrocious. But and with Michigan losing their QB, people seem to they've cooled on Michigan having a chance at Ohio State. I mean, Auburn, Alabama. Go ahead.
No, I just am. I'm really looking is more than anything. I mean, their offense just has some games where they struggle. They struggle to move the ball through the air, and even running the ball. Sometimes the whole running game turns into J.T. Barrett. And I think Michigan is talented enough on defense that they could hold Ohio State down. And I'm not saying this will be Alabama LSU where it's scoreless going to the fourth quarter, but I can see Ohio State having like 10 points or something in the fourth quarter where, Michigan, while it's not going to be much easier, if any easier, for Michigan to score on Ohio State, I still think they could keep the scoring down enough where if they could get an interception, a block punt, something like that Michigan, if they were to get a lead, let's just put it this way, I think it's going to be a low enough scoring game that if Michigan could get a lead in the second half, the pressure would really ratchet up on Ohio State, especially in front of that home crowd. And so I think, I don't know, I have a feeling this is going to be a really tight game.
Ooh, I hope so. Okay. I'm with you. What else out there? Florida State. How do you see that one?
Yeah. The effort that Florida had, now I don't know how much that took out of them, but they obviously were really motivated after all that had been said leading up to that game and then the pregame scuffle and all that stuff. And look, LSU still outplayed them. We can't lose sight of that. I mean, LSU should have won that game by double digits if they had just taken advantage of the opportunities they had in the red zone. But it was a huge win for Florida. Florida State has not been the most consistent team, as we've already discussed, and they are beatable. And so if Florida were to win that game, all of a sudden we start having a very serious conversation on Sunday and into next week about if the minor miracle occurred and Florida were to knock off Alabama, would Florida get into the playoff? Because they would be a 2-loss SEC champion that would have closed with wins at LSU, at Florida State, and a neutral field against Alabama. I mean, that's a team that nobody's talking about in terms of the playoff that might be in if they just win the last 2 games. And once again, that's not likely, but I give them somewhat of a chance in Tallahassee. And, their margin for error is just so small because of their offensive limitations.
Right. Wow. That would be wild. And, I hope we get some good ones because I don't know what A&M and LSU will give us as far as kicking off the weekend. Brad?
Yeah, you know what, Bo? The second, probably the next biggest game of the week other than Ohio State and Michigan is Friday, is the Apple Cup. Just from a playoff standpoint, I know there might not be a whole lot of people in Mississippi who care about it, but in terms of playoff drama, if Washington beats Washington State, and Washington is able to end up as a 12-1 champion of the Pac-12, that could create just a whole lot of problems for the selection committee. And isn't that what we all want to see? Problems for the selection committee,
yes,
them having to make difficult decisions and possibly having Ohio State number 2 in the nation going into the last week and then not play and drop all the way from 2 to 5. I mean, that's the type of thing that would be in play if Washington wins. So that's another game to keep an eye on.
And Leach is another guy to keep an eye on, depending on how many jobs open up. I mean, when you can win in Lubbock and Pullman, as you know, Brad, you're one heck of a football coach. And I know he's been labeled offensively. Go ahead.
Yeah, as I said about Brett Bielema, he's an acquired taste. Like Leach he's an odd dude, and he's gonna say some things too, and you know what you're getting, and you just gotta be okay with it before you sign him up.
We'll leave it at that. Hey, happy Thanksgiving to you and your family, Brad. Appreciate you.
All right,
Brad.
Take care, Bo.
Thanks, man.
Great holiday.
Brad Edwards, ESPN Insider on the New Belgium Fat Tower Hotline. Straight ahead. If FSU opens up, guys, it's on. This thing's going to get wild.